Okay. So welcome everybody to our Wednesday webinar series. We're doing this every Wednesday. We actually started January 2020, doing this once a month. Little did we know how important Zoom and webinars would be in 2020, but we did start this back then and it has continued since then. So today we have an incredible speaker and he already has a shout out from one of the attendees. So that was nice. And today we have Matt Blake, and Matt Blake is the president and CEO of Blake Consulting and Sales Training of Sandler Training. And what he does is he gives a no-nonsense sales techniques that get results for sales professionals. So some of the solutions that Blake Consulting gives to his clients are sales and sales management, problems with customer service, they help to solve, leadership management, they help to solve. So if you're looking for sales solutions, Matt from Blake Consulting is the person to turn to. So we have a very short period of time. I don't want to spend any more time me speaking. Matt, it is my pleasure to introduce you and thank you for doing our webinar today.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to take the next 20, 25 minutes, or actually 30 minutes to speak with you and just to give you a little goal for today. My goal for today for all of you is that as I'm talking here is that as we talk about the buyer and seller dance, that you can take something from our talk today and apply it to your business. For anybody who's looking to have brand new customers or move it through the sales cycle, that you can take one nugget from this where you can apply it to your business for the next 30, 60, 90 days to grow it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to jump into this. I'm going to jump into the buyer seller dance. And what I'm going to speak on and for the next 20, 25 minutes is, how do we buy today? How do buyers actually buy today? How do sellers actually sell today? And are there alternatives to help grow your business? If anybody's been in new business development for the past year, the challenges. We've been experiencing many challenges with COVID and going virtual. Selling is a true profession. And that's the first thing I want to make sure that everybody understands that if you're in sales, it's a profession. It's not something to do. So we're going to talk about that today. And I'm going to walk through when we say the buyer seller dance, what does that really mean? So you're going to see me turn my back a couple of times because I can't see everybody. So as I'm going through my presentation, you'll see me shifting back and forth. So again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll be sure to get to them, but I plan on leaving the last 5-10 minutes where we can actually have a Q&A and answer any questions, or if you like additional information, happy to share it. So let's get started. Let's jump in. I'm going to move this out of the way. So what do we mean by buyer-seller dance? So here's the question. You can just put it in the chat. And when we talk about a slow dance, what I want you to do is picture a slow dance, okay? And so you're out there with your partner and you're having a dance, right? So if you're having a slow dance, somebody has to take the one. Just throw it in the chat. I can't see it, but just throw it in the chat. I'm sure some people are saying somebody has to take the lead. Now, if you have two people taking the lead, what happens? Okay, is the dance going to be coordinated? Is it going to get clumsy? Is it going to move in the right direction? No, somebody has to take the lead in order to cover the ground that you're going to be dancing so that it's fluid and it's easy. So if you have two partners trying to take the lead, it doesn't work out very well. Well, in sales, that often happens. You have two people trying to take the lead. They have two conflicting strategies. You have the prospect who's expecting to ask questions, for you to do a presentation, answer any and all questions, and give them solutions. And then you have the salesperson who also plans to want to ask probing questions and wants to understand the real business and how their business and what they're selling can solve the buyer's problems. Problem is, when that's not expected, sometimes you have a collision. Okay, so it's almost, again, you have two people trying to take the lead. So why is my clicker not working? Let's see if I can fix this. Sorry, everybody. There we go. So let's talk about how we actually sell today. What I want you to think about is, what is your sales process? Anybody who's meeting a prospect for the very first time, what is their sales process? Okay, and oftentimes when I ask prospects the same question, I ask what their sales process is, they struggle with this question. But okay, it's okay. If you're struggling with that, it's all right. So typically the first step when you meet with a prospect, I'm really sorry, here I'm all out of order. Here we go. So when we meet with the first prospect for the first time, oftentimes the very first thing we want to do is do what? Uncover needs. I used to call this a needs analysis. We need to find out what the problems, what the goals are, what the challenges are. Okay, the second thing that oftentimes we do is we then present a solution, right? We find out what's wrong, what are the problems, the challenges, and then we want to solve it. Sometimes that's a demo, sometimes that's a plant tour, sometimes that's doing a sketch or a drawing or a proposal. Next would be is, do we know the sale's not closed at that point? The next is that we got to close it. And I hear business owners all the time say to me, my people never do what? Ask for the business. So this is where we handle the stalls and objections at this point. Now, next step oftentimes leads to this, what I call the chase mode, right? Because the sale's not closed, you're going to hear things like, this sounds great. Glad you shared this information. Let me take this, let me mull it over, call me back in 2 weeks, let me share with my partner, all that good stuff. But what do we find ourselves doing? It's then chasing. It's not following up, not being politically correct, we're chasing. We become a pest, right? Anybody feel like a pest and having to chase after prospects, buzzing around their voicemail? So oftentimes this step here leads to people getting out of sales because nobody likes to feel like a pest, right? So that's typically, the sales cycle, sales system and how we sell today. I know things can be different, but those are typically the 4 steps that happen, okay? And the challenges that come with selling. Now, let's talk about how buyers buy, okay? All buyers have a system. We all love to buy, by the way, and we hate feeling like we've been sold, right? So the very first thing a buyer does is withhold information. Or they might suggest a need, but it's not really the real problem. Why? Because they often don't trust us. Remember, buyers like to buy, but they don't feel like they've been sold. And all of us are buyers. All of us have been there before when we're meeting a salesperson for the first time. And what do? Okay, do we give all our information right away, or do we hold information back? So, because until we can trust the person who we're speaking with. Next is the prospect and your buyer wants to gather information. And they want to gather information without committing to anything. Because information is what? Just put it in the chat. Information is what? Information is valuable. Okay? Have you ever been in a situation that the buyer didn't even buy from you? They didn't buy from anybody. Okay? They did nothing. Because oftentimes they want information because they know information is valuable. And again, it goes back to this proposals, the pricing, the drawings, the specs, all the good stuff that they have, so that they can help them make a determination on where they want to go. But the real problem with that is oftentimes the buyer or the salesperson doesn't even know why they're asking for the information. Next step is then oftentimes they mislead. They sound positive. Why? They know that salespeople are well-trained to handle objections and stalls. And the easiest way to keep the process moving where they're in control is to sound positive, to avoid all that. A lot of us don't like conflict, Okay, so what they do is they say, hey, great, this sounds great. Thanks for all the information. I'm going to take this information and I'll get back to you. Or follow up with me in 2 weeks, follow up with me in a month. Okay, and then what happens is, not always, but sometimes what can happen is after they collect their information, what do? They go into the witness protection program. Then they hide all those follow-up, all those voicemails, all that good stuff that we're doing. So at that point, and you can put this in the chat, okay, when we're at this point, right, now we have 2 people trying to take the lead. Okay, who at this point, well, let me backtrack for a second and say this, okay? This system, this happens all the time, and there's a fundamental problem with it. The fundamental problem is the prospects have caught on to the system, our selling system. They know how to gather information, and they know how to control it, okay? So if this is a fundamental problem, they know all of this, and we fall into this as salespeople. You can put this in the chat. Who wins in this situation? Okay, who wins in the situation if the buyer's controlling it, all the action, who's winning? The reality of it is, and again, I'll just give you the quick answer, is nobody wins. Because what happens? Oftentimes, we start presenting solutions as salespeople, not to the real problems, or maybe we never understood the real problem to begin with. Okay, so what happens oftentimes is we have this. What happens is the buyer obtains this information. Okay, and what we're doing is we're not actually, the information we're gathering is not the real information that solves the problem. For any of you who've ever participated in RFP or have been in a bidding war, how many times have you know that the buyer bought something that was not in their best interest? In other words, you had the best service and the best product, but for their reasons and the information they gathered, they went with somebody else. Okay, oftentimes they're making the decisions on the wrong criteria, which many times it comes down to price. It's what they're making their decision on. And that's not always the right thing to do, as you all well know. Okay, so we know who's leading the dance. It's the buyer. Okay, and so with the buyers leading the dance, so let's think about this. What's the real buyer's system? The real buyer's system is this. Okay, it is to lie, steal, lie, and hide. Now you may think this may startle something. Some of you may be offended in what I'm saying, but the reality of it is the buyers are not buying. We're all buyers, and we've all done this. Okay, they're not lying to be malicious. They're lying because they don't trust us, and as a result, what they want to do is they're not going to tell you the real truth, what's going on. Then they're going to try to steal your information. And then they're going to lie about their interest. And then they're going to hide. Okay, and it's all based down onto trust. Okay, now how do we flip this? How do we flip it where we can build trust immediately? How do we flip it where we can get people to open up? Because unless the buyer is willing to share really what's going on in their world and what their real challenges are, we have to have an open and honest conversation about that. So there's 7 steps that they're going to lead to that. And the first step with it is this. First step is to be what I call disarmingly honest. And here's what disarmingly honest sounds like. Somebody says, so I use Albert's name for an example. Albert, this information that you're sharing is great, but I tell you what, I don't know a lot about your company. So, and I'm looking to possibly utilize your service in your company, although we have a company in place that we're fairly happy with. So, but I'm open to alternatives. So tell me 2 or 3 things about your company that you think would be important for me to know. What are most salespeople going to do, right? What are most of us going to do? We're going to jump in and start talking about all the great stuff that we do. But here's the problem, it's too early. It's too early because we don't know why that question is even being asked. So and I'll pretend I'm Albert. If I'm Albert and I'm speaking to Mary, I would say, Mary, that's a good question, but it's a tough one to answer. And honestly, I don't know how to answer that question because it's really going to depend on your situation. It's even going to depend on what you're looking for in a partner. It's going to depend on even what your vision of the solution might be. So again, it may make sense for you to stay with what you have. Now, do you mind if we take a couple steps back where I can ask you some straightforward questions to determine whether or not there is something we can help you with? And if we do find there's something that we can help you with, then we can talk about next steps and what that might look like. Or we could quickly find out that we're not the right fit and we'll have a good conversation. Anyway, we'll just simply part the meeting friends. That's being disarmingly honest. Where do you think your credibility rate's going to go? By just being that straightforward and being that disarmingly honest and speaking with somebody. Second step is always have an upfront agreement in advance of your meeting on what you're going to talk about. In other words, you want to make sure you identify how much time you're going to have. You want to identify what does the prospect want to get out of the meeting? What's their agenda? What's the purpose of the meeting? Why are we getting together? What is your agenda? What do you want to get out of the meeting? What's your agenda and expectations? So you want to find out the prospect's expectations and agenda, your expectations and agenda. So we have agendas covered. You also want to have an outcome. What's an outcome of the meeting? What decisions are going to be made at the end of the meeting? And all of that should be decided in advance of the meeting. And here's the key to it. It needs to be mutually agreed upon between you and your prospect. It takes all pressure off during the meeting. There'll be no selling done. Now we're just having a conversation. Third step is to have actionable pain. In other words, stop selling on needs. It certainly starts at needs, but it goes much further than needs. Okay? Needs and goals are not going to make a sale. What you want to find out is what is the context behind their needs. In other words, what's the context behind their problems? What are the different things that they've tried and haven't worked out? What has worked? What is their vision for the solution? What is their commitment to wanting to take action to fix their problems? All of that has to be figured out before you do any type of presentation or discussion. All that so that you know what you can solve for them and how committed is the buyer on doing that. So actionable pain, which means also their personal, compelling, emotional reason to take action. Next is investment. Are they willing and able to invest in order to fix their pain? Some people are going to be willing but unable. Others are going to be able but unwilling, and you have to determine. Now, and when we talk about investments, it's any and all investments. Money, of course, but it's also time. You have to have access to people. So are they going to put the time in? Are they going to give access to the people? Are they going to fire their incumbent? All that has to be figured out. And then the next step is to understand their decision process. What's the process they're going to make decisions? Okay, who's going to be involved in making that decision? So you want to really understand the people, process, and criteria for making a decision. I'll say it again. People, process, and criteria. Okay? And these 3 steps happen before the presentation. Okay? Before the presentation. I'll say it again. You want to qualify these 3 steps before the presentation, which presentation means fulfillment. This is when you want to go through and fulfill what your buyer shared with you. So when you get the presentation proposal, it should be using their information to make sure that you're getting a yes or no answer. So the yes or no answer means that by the time you do a presentation, you're not doing a presentation to a non-decision maker, you're doing a presentation to the decision makers. A yes or no answer. You know their pain, you understand what they're willing and able to invest to fix that pain, and you know that you're in front of the right people that can give you yes or no answer in the end. And more times than not, you're getting yeses because all you're using is their information that they share with you during this process. Last step is having a post-sell step. And post-sell step means this. This is the step where you close and confirm the order, okay? And what it means is this enables you to do two things. Number one, it enables you to make sure there's no backouts, no buyer's remorse. So back in the days when I was taught selling and my sales training was, as soon as you close a sale, just get out of the way. Close your mouth before you mess it up, basically. It's the total opposite. You want to make sure there's no misunderstanding what's going to happen, what next steps are, and that everything is closed and confirmed. So there's no backouts. Second is that for cross-selling and upselling opportunities down the road, if you have other services that you want to build a relationship with this client where they can buy more from you, this is a great opportunity to take the time to schedule future meetings after the sale to get together to, one, make sure that everything is going smoothly the way it should be. So in other words, have business review meetings, and during those business review meetings, also review other products and services that you have that might be helpful to your prospect. So I'm going to stop here. I know I ran through this really quick. So I want to stop here to make sure that we can answer any questions. Going through this process, or if anybody wants to share, maybe some situations they're going through now where they've actually seen some of this, that'd be great. So Kathleen, I'm gonna stop here and I'll turn it over to you and to the group.
Thanks so much, Matt. Matt, that was really, really well done. So it was concise and it was real life experiences. So thank you so much for offering your knowledge to us with this dance. If you do have any questions or any comments, please do put it into either the chat or the Q&A section. Question would be, you and I think, have been in the sales game for a while. What we did 20 years ago, or even 15 years ago, isn't the game anymore. So what would you say to those sales professionals that have been in sales for a while and think they know how to do this about sales in 2021? What's the biggest differences than the old school ways, do you think?
Well, the biggest difference is the obvious, Kathleen, which I'm sure everybody's experiencing, is we're not getting in front of people and nearly as much. And here we are today with a Zoom meeting. So when we start talking about building trust and relationships with our meetings, having upfront agreements with anybody who you're speaking with is so important. Because where the fear and anxiety happens within people, your prospects and including salespeople, is when you go into meetings not knowing what's going to happen. Fear and anxiety comes from uncertainty. So the more certainty that you can put in place when you have a conversation, the better the conversation is going to go, because both parties are going to relax. The biggest thing that from a prospect's point of view, when you are crystal clear, hey, at the end of this meeting, we're going to make one or two decisions, and that's all we're going to make. Maybe it's just one decision. What's going to happen is they're going to have a sigh of relief, and they're going to say, wow, this is great, because they know what's going to happen in the meeting. So what I would say is the more preparation that you do, and especially the fact that when you have a Zoom meeting and you only have limited time, having these agreements in advance of the meeting and at the beginning of each meeting is hugely important. and it will truly help you build that trust that's necessary to virtually sell these days. It's a huge component.
Perfect. We do have a question from Kate. She said, in addition to being disarmingly honest, what other traits do you find really hit home with buyers and help them let their guard down?
Great question, by the way. The biggest one, and many salespeople go into meetings and they want to just jump into challenges. They just want to jump in and they start asking about pain points and challenges. So take a step back. Don't be afraid to take a true active interest in whomever you're speaking with. In other words, ask questions about the buyer or the prospect. How did they end up in this company? How did they end up in this industry? What led them there? And get some history put together. What I advise all my clients is they should have questions to establish rapport by taking an active interest. Number one, I call it ABC. Okay, not always be closing, always be curious. Be curious with who you're speaking with. Have questions wrapped around the company. Have questions around their industry. Have questions around their marketplace. In other words, hey, is there anything within the industry right now that piqued your interest to want to have this meeting today? Is there anything you're following in the industry that said, hey, this was a good idea to have a meeting? Something as simple as that. And so have questions in three areas to establish rapport. One, the question about the past, and a question about the present, and a question about the future. Past, present, and future. And when you're establishing rapport, and don't be afraid to ask those questions. People love to talk about themselves. The last point I'll make is past and present questions are far more effective than future-based questions.
Excellent. Well, believe it or not, we are at 12:30. And Kate says, thank you for your answer, by the way. So we're at 12:30. If you have any other questions that you have for Matt, please send them to the chamber and I'd be happy to forward those over, as well as you can reach Matt directly at his business, which is Blake Consulting and Sales Training. Matt, once again, we really do appreciate your time today. You gave truly actionable items that we can start doing today and could change maybe the way that we dance with our buyers, and maybe we give them a nice big dip and we win that dance. So I appreciate your time, Matt, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today.
Well, thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you, everybody, for having me today. Good luck. And again, if there's anything that I can help you with, as far as what we talked about today, feel free to reach out. And otherwise, good selling, everybody.
Perfect. And just as a reminder, you will have this as a recording on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. So please follow those platforms so that you can be able to see this and share it as well. And Matt, everybody's sending in their thank you and what a great job and all of that. So big pats on the back to you today.
Great. Well, thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Kathleen.
Okay.
Enjoy the beautiful weather today.
You too. All right. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next month.
Yeah, bye-bye.